want to recognize a couple of other people as well. So Liz Pate, who works with us here at School Improvement Network, and she's actually based in Iowa City. And then also Doreen Wolfgram, a grade 4 teacher at Berlin International School. So it's just a little side note. It's been fascinating. The last 6 months, every webinar that I have done has included 2 to 3 people from not just different countries, but truly different continents. And so today, the fact that we have a participant from Berlin and a participant from Pakistan, it's exciting. In fact, I love the idea that the knowledge, the collective knowledge that we all possess around how schools can succeed with all students. Thank goodness for technology. We're finding ways to really start to share this and I guess truly build collective knowledge instead of isolated knowledge. So welcome everyone. This is a fun topic for me. It's been neat work that we've been engaging in the last while to really try to redefine how we approach professional development and orienting it towards a skills-based approach. And so today we're just going to walk through and lay out, try to define and differentiate, what is a skill versus what is a competency. How is it that we focus in on the skills of effective teaching without letting the skills get lost within the larger pedagogy of teaching. This is in no way challenging the general pedagogy of teaching, but in terms of really improving teachers' effectiveness in the classroom, redesigning professional development so it's focused on the set of skills that teachers need at the particular moment that they're working. So just to get you into a bit of a mindset around this, the key question when you think about a skills-based approach to growth and competency and development is can you actually do something? And so skills are exclusively about application. And so we might need knowledge to substantiate those skills, but we only have the skill if we can use the skill, apply the skill. And so that key question of can you? And so as we look at this shift to skills, I want to take you just on a little journey, a little fun journey. We're going to have fun with this. So bubblegum blowing. And if any of you are really good at bubblegum blowing, please let me know in the question box, because personally, I'm not good at it. And so my kids, Maya and Dominic, age 11 and 7, Dom is 11 and Maya is 7. I'll show you a photo of them in just a little bit. Of course, they are all caught up in bubblegum right now. And Maya especially is desperately trying to get a bubble blown. Personally, I don't know how to do it, so I'm not good at this. And we actually, so Liz writes in and says that she is a master bubble blower, and she's been practicing this for years. So Liz, if I'm off my rocker as I'm describing this, please let me know. But I really have to think, if I want to blow a bubble, well, blowing a bubble is a skill, right? And so I have to think of the outcome. I have to start with the outcome in mind, which of course is a large bubble blown from bubble gum. And then I work backwards to say, well, how do I actually accomplish that? So here's a little video that I found online, Big League Bubble Chew, and we're just going to watch it for a moment. So I'm going to play it here.
Now there may be audio to this, but I think because Curtis is using headphones, it may not be coming through.
Oh, sorry about that. I just heard your statement there. So nonetheless, the only audio that played in that, the only audio that played in that was actually music. So
Okay.
you saw the whole illustration, you saw the words and everything. Okay, so if I want to blow a bubble, I look at that, I'm like, pretty easy, right? Basically, I take gum, I put it in my mouth, I chew it for a while until it becomes soft. Then I press it against, against my teeth, my lips, and I try to blow it. Looks easy, right? Okay, so now that I've seen that, I can start practicing it. And I may pick it up quick, I may not. So I can determine how much additional help do I need. Bubblegum blowing, it's simple, right? So let's back up a little bit and think about if we were in a traditional professional development setting in a school, and the topic of this professional development was magical bubble blowing. And we all engage in this, and we have time set aside for it. We all come together. It's a workshop setting. And, what are some of the ways in a traditional professional development approach that we might actually engage in with magical bubble blowing? Well, we may look at the history of bubble gum, the pedagogy of blowing bubbles, research of bubble blowing best practices. The awesome thing with it is that if I attend this workshop, I will get credit for knowing how to, for the knowledge of bubble blowing just for attending. Even though I've never had to show anyone, I can actually blow a bubble with gum. My ticket out the door, well, it's kind of messy to have everybody blowing a bubble as they leave. So I might just write something on how I intend to practice blowing bubbles. So in a traditional professional development sense, that's how we might approach just the very simple skill of blowing bubbles. But really, does it take all that? And so here's another simple little chart I found online, how to blow a bubblegum bubble. Now, I want you to look at this for a moment. What are the key things that stand out? This is clear to me. I can look at this. It is showing me how to chew it. It's showing me where I should be pushing it. It's even showing me in box 10 there how happy I am when I finish it. How would you characterize? Now remember, we're trying to differentiate between a traditional professional development approach that's going to look at a broad topic. We're trying to differentiate that with really a skills-based approach. So as you read through this, as you look at this, what are the characteristics that pop up that really help you quickly master the skill of bubblegum blowing? And share in the question and answer box. What are the characteristics you see? This is very, how would you define what you see here? The characteristics. So as I look at this, as I'm waiting for your answers to come in, one of the key things that I see in this is that there is evidence of what this should look like everywhere I look. Breen writes in visual illustrations. That's right. It's not a blown out chart. It's simple. This is what the mouth should look like. This is what the bubble should look like. It's nice. He's even showing us how to unwrap the bubble. Liz says step by step. Doreen reinforces that those visual illustrations really help visual learners. So everywhere I look at this, as you kind of think about this visual piece, the step by step, every single one of these steps can be measured with actual evidence. It's actually non-theoretical. Obtain a piece of gum, remove the gum from wrapper, put the gum in your mouth, chew the gum. This is a bit of a recipe approach. I recognize that. But even if I did not read that center column, which is the recipe, and I purely looked at the right-hand side with those illustrations, I'm going to be able to replicate that very quickly because I can recognize in my own application whether or not I'm actually doing the skill. Am I chewing the gum? Particularly when you look at 5, 6, 7. Okay, where do I place the gum in my mouth? Okay, now I can feel it. It's at the front of my lips. Now I'm starting to blow. So it's the evidence nature of skills. And this is where I get really fascinated with this approach to skills. when we redesign professional development in a skills-based approach, the learning occurs around the evidence. And so instead of saying in kind of a, a broad way, well, you're supposed to use your mouth to blow out the bubble, this is saying push the gum to the front of your lips and then blow. Now, if I'm doing this, I can measure my own performance at that moment. It's evidence-based. And evidence-based is really the key to a skills-based approach. And Doreen, I appreciate this comment as well. You say it's a simple evaluation, evidence of the accomplished goal. I'm able to see what my goal is. I want to blow a bubble. Quickly see how to do it, practice it, and then there's immediate evidence I've done this skill or I have not. So this is, a fun way. And of course, I know showing bubblegum chewing to a group of teachers is, gum's a scary thing in the classroom, but it's a great way to illustrate this skills-based approach. So as we circle back to this question of can you? Now, obviously, teaching in a classroom is many, many times more complex than blowing bubble gum. But it's still a skills-based approach circles back to this key question of can you? Can you actually do the practice that you're learning? So here's a photo of my two children. This is Dominic and this is Maya. So before Dominic is 11 and Maya is 7. The reason why I love this photo is that when you watch a kid, a child, take on a new skill, they decide they want to do something, watch how they engage in it. It is a continual cycle of, can I do this? Assessing their performance, learning what they might need to do, practicing it, reassessing. As you watch a kid take on a new skill, they really show you, they illustrate clearly how it is we master skills. And so this particular photo, this was a trip to Yellowstone last year. My family and I, we're based in Salt Lake City, Utah. We drive up to Yellowstone. We've been there a few days. Our last morning, we go up to this awesome spot along a river called the Boiling River. And it's where the hot pots roll into this cold mountain stream, and it creates these kind of natural hot tubs. Really just a fun adventure with my two kids. As we're coming back down the trail, Dominic sees this tree that's growing out over the river. And Dominic, 11 years old, feels really good about his balance. He feels competent within the skill of balance, but he wants to prove it. He wants to perform his skill. So he immediately starts walking, balancing out on this branch that's out over the stream. He quickly arrives at proving his competency within the skill. Now, Maya, who's 4 years younger and a little less confident about her skill of balance, sees her brother do this and thinks, I can do this. I want to try it. And so Maya goes out. Now, as a father, I can say, stop, I don't want you to do that. Maya's already decided, I'm going to master the skill. I'm going to figure this out. So my opportunity, if I try to stop her at this point, I'm only going to disappoint her. Because in Maya's mind, she's already established that the only way she can measure her success is to actually go out and do this. So Maya approaches the branch slowly, more cautiously, kind of goes out on her hands and knees at first, stretches her arms, feels her balance, puts one foot up, then another foot up, arms back out. She's feeling confident now. And now, as you can see in this photo, she starts scooting out on the branch. She masters the skill. She has evidence. She's seeing her own evidence that she can do this. And so again, I love using children to illustrate this concept of mastering the skill. We see this do them all the time. Take kids into the forest, up into the mountains, onto the beach, see them take on a task. They're going to keep practicing it until they master it. When do they know they master it? When they're doing exactly what they set out to do. So again, in this mindset of skills. So when it comes to the classroom, to a teacher's skills, we have to ask the question, well, what skills actually matter? And so this is a lot of the work that we've been doing at School Improvement Network is really trying to determine how we define out the skills that matter for teachers to master in the classroom. And so I'm going to give you this illustration here, and this is a way that we break down, or that we organize, almost really nest the skills within the standards. And so you think about, let's just take a particular broad area of a teacher's application on a daily basis. And that's really what we're labeling a mastery of practice. In this particular case, we're talking, I'm going to use classroom management or a supportive classroom learning environment to illustrate this skills-based approach. And so when you think about a supportive classroom learning environment, there are so many things that have to go on for this to be a classroom that works for every single student. Doreen, I'm going to refer to you again since you are currently teaching in a 4th grade class. Think about all the things that you do on a day-by-day basis. Knowing each student, helping the student feel safe within your learning environment, letting them feel connected to you, to others, the procedures and routines, the collaboration that goes on, the expectations. There are all of these unique skills that on a daily basis, Doreen, you are applying in your classroom for all of your kids to feel engaged in the work. That's this mastery level, the broad level, supportive classroom learning environment. But in order to really master this, and so, let's say that I'm a teacher who is struggling at having this truly supportive classroom learning environment. My kids tend to feel a bit disconnected or a bit disengaged in the learning. So I need to work on this. So if I try to work on just the supportive classroom learning environment, I take on all the things I just talked about at once. That is a massive task, just huge. So as I think about, and actually, Doreen, if you're good with it, because you wrote in and said relationships. So I'm going to focus on this piece of relationships. Let's say that as a teacher, I'm good at procedures and routines. I'm good at keeping, at intervening when kids are getting off task. But where I'm struggling is that my students don't feel connected to me and they don't feel connected to each other. There's a lack of a relationship, that's existing in the classroom. So if I just focus on classroom learning environment in the big sense, in the broad sense, I may not have time to address my needed skill, which is how to build a relationship with a student. So we've got to break this down. So one way that we break down these broad concepts, these broad pedagogical concepts within teaching is by turning to teaching standards or teacher competencies to define this. And so again, this is just illustrative, but one competency to consider is building a safe and respectful learning community. Another competency to consider is effective classroom management. So Doreen, as you had mentioned, relationships. Relationships really fall within this safe and respectful learning community. If I have a good relationship with my student, well, they feel safe within my classroom. If that student has good relationships with other students, again, they feel safe within there. They feel respected for who they are. And so there are standards that exist that define all of this. But again, focusing on safe and respectful learning community, well, there are so many skills that I need to master as a teacher in order to make that work. And so these standards or competencies get broken down into more finite skills, such as teacher to student interaction, student to student interaction. Interacting effectively with students is a skill that I can refine. I can learn it, I can apply it, I can refine it and really master it. Likewise, collaboration. Managing student collaboration. What does it look like? And so think about how we're making these skills. These skills are much more finite than the competency. Effectively managing collaboration in my classroom, well, that's something that I can focus in on. It's like, blowing a bubble with bubble gum. It's part of this broader idea of a safe and respectful learning community. But it's something I can look at and really start to work on and apply right now. So another skill that I can look at is norms and values. As I think about effective classroom management, routines and procedures, very specific skill. And there's skills within that. The skill of establishing clear routines and procedures, practicing them, collaborating in their design with my students, reinforcing them on a daily basis. That is, driving the effective use of routines and procedures in my classroom is a skill that as a teacher, I would need to use every single day. If I'm not up to par with that skill, it's disrupting the rest of this supportive classroom learning environment. So I can dive in on it. I can work at it. Another skill, high expectations, and also interventions. And so just again, go with me on this, that I'm trying to establish that these skills, these finite skills, are nested within particular teacher competencies or standards. And those standards are nested within broad pedagogical concepts. So when we shift our professional development, traditional professional development is the reverse of what I have illustrated right here. We really begin the conversation with mastery of practice. We're talking about supportive learning environments in the broad sense. And then throughout the professional development experience, we're breaking, we're then talking about them more specifically according to the competencies or standards. And then with what little time is left over, now we start talking about the specific skills or strategies that I as a teacher can implement in my classroom. What we are proposing in a professional growth and competency system is this whole process is reversed. Looking at this previous chart, rather than starting at the top and moving down, we're really going to start with each individual skill, the skill that is needed by the particular teacher. So Doreen, if you don't mind me going into some of the stuff you've shared as well. Obviously, Doreen, you're very strong at building relationships. And so that part of safe and respectful learning community, the interactions, whatnot, you're good at that, but not actually having been in your classroom. So just, go with me on this exercise. Let's assume that you have great relationships, but you struggle at managing collaboration. So in a skills-based approach, you and I are going to assess your performance, look at how you're managing your classroom, and you and I are going to collectively decide, collaboration is really where you want to put your effort, your improvement effort. That now becomes our focus. Our goal, our outcome is evident. Good student-to-student collaboration in the classroom. You and I aren't talking about the broad concept, supportive classroom learning environments. We aren't getting into a lot of kind of theory and larger ideas with this. We're really saying, Doreen, right now we're going to work on collaboration. This is, in fact, Doreen, I have to share. Thank you so much for continually responding to this dialogue. So Doreen puts in and says, ask, well, what does the skill look like, sound like, feel like? If someone came into my classroom for the first time, which skill would they recognize within the first few minutes? So looking at those questions that you posed, Doreen, talking about collaboration. So what does good student collaboration look like? What does it sound like? What does good student collaboration feel like for me as a teacher, and feel like for the students? So we're setting that goal. We've seen someone else blow the bubble gum. We want to do that. We know what the outcome is. Now we're going to work on the skill to get there. So in a skills-based approach, our work begins with the evidence-based skill. We're only going to work on collaboration. Doreen, as you master collaboration, then we're going to move into interventions. We're going to move into routines and procedures. We're going to work on each of the skills in a finite sense. together, they really start looking like, like a good level of competency on your part in your application in the classroom. And eventually this all adds up to, to Doreen truly having a masterful class, just a beautiful learning environment for all students. So it's reversing the order within which we approach this. We begin with the skill first. So part of this discussion has to look at how it is that we define what these skills are. And so, I have a couple of things up here, which are the way that various states within the U.S. typically tend to lay out their teaching standards. And so as you look at this learning environment here, this really is defining this green box of competency of standards. As I read through this, there's good information in this, but as a standard, if I'm a teacher, let's say, Doreen, we're going to go with you again. You're working on collaboration. Well, if a state has said, this is how we expect you to perform to this particular standard of a learning environment, there's not a lot of information within this standard to help you actually master collaboration. As you master collaboration, well, you're really addressing this number 2, creates, maintains a climate of safety, respect, support for all students. Okay, so our standards don't exactly give us guidance as to how we work on our practice. They're really only kind of defining some of that outcome. Oftentimes, states will use rubrics, or school systems will use rubrics that help us see various levels of performance in relation to the standards. Again, the rubric helps me measure my performance. But as I read through rubrics, sometimes it helps me see where I really need to learn and apply my work, and sometimes it still remains a bit vague. So what we've done here at School Improvement Network is we've gone back to kind of a central core set of standards, which is the INTASC teaching standards. The INTASC teaching standards were developed by the Council of Chief State School Officers, by the accreditation body for schools of education in the U.S., highly researched. And so the INTASC teaching standards are kind of a repository of best teaching standards. Great place to go to make sure we are considering research-based standards. But as we've been studying the INTASC standards, what we've realized is that these standards are not actually broken down to the skill level. And so I need to illustrate this just a little bit to, again, get to this idea of the skills are nested within the standards and the mastery of practice. So if I go into the INTASC teaching standard, standard number 3, learning environments. The standard reads, the teacher works with others to create environments that support individual and collaborative learning, that encourage positive social interaction, active engagement in learning, and self-motivation. Awesome. Every student out there deserves a teacher who can create a learning environment as described here. This is also broad. And one of the things that I will do when I'm face-to-face with educators is we'll talk about, well, how much time would you need to really be able to master this particular standard as it's described here? In fact, I was just with a group of educators yesterday in Louisiana, and we were going through this exercise, looking at this very standard. And most of the teachers were saying, you've got to give me at least a semester, up to 2 to 3 years for me to really master what is described in the standard so that you walk in my classroom and you see this. Okay, that is a long learning engagement. That's a long time. And the challenge with a long scope, if I'm continually working on this, is that it gets diverted. Other things come up. It's hard for me to stay focused on really improving my skill set when it's defined in such a broad, long-term way. So the INTASC standards are broken down into indicators. So teacher indicator 1, the teacher collaborates with others to build a positive learning climate marked by respect, rigor, and responsibility. Teacher indicator 2, the teacher manages the learning environment to engage learners actively. Okay, so those 2 teacher indicators definitely help me unpack the standard. I read that standard, Then I look at the indicators. The indicators are a more focused way of saying, am I seeing this standard in play in the classroom? Still, if I go to teacher indicator 1, teacher collaborates with others to build a positive learning climate marked by respect, work, and responsibility. Awesome. I mean, this is seeing the bubblegum blown full. You can do it. But how do I get there? Because this teacher indicator now is just the outcome. It doesn't actually give me a developmental process. It's not broken enough into the skills needed to accomplish this. So what we've been working on here at School Improvement Network is breaking down these indicators even further into micro-credentials that are evidence-based assessments that a teacher can engage in, where the teacher is submitting evidence of their application of the skills that make up this particular practice. And so to go into this, I want to jump into a skills pathway for positive learning climate. So we can really, once again, illustrate what's going on here. So this is the skills pathway for a positive learning climate. Again, just to reiterate, the skills pathway we're looking at is a much more narrow, focused, skills-based view of teacher indicator 1. Teacher indicator 1 is part of standard number 3, learning environments. So we've really drilled in here. These are the skills that are nested within the standard. So when we look at the skills pathway, well, there's levels. And so we're trying to define what the performance on the part of the teacher looks like in relation to the skill for a beginning teacher, a proficient teacher, and a distinguished teacher. So there's actually a developmental pathway that the educator can follow to increase the impact of this particular skill. So we were talking about student collaboration. So let's just look at this row on student collaboration. A beginning, if I'm really, Doreen, let's say I'm working with you on student collaboration. So if I come into your classroom and I observe, okay, you can definitely work on collaboration. There's a lot of really good stuff going on in your classroom, great relationships with your students. But where the kids tend to lose focus on the learning is when they're collaborating with each other. And so as a teacher, you're not yet proficient in that skill of getting your students to really dialogue around the learning, collaborate around the learning. So as I come in and observe your practice and we review it together, what I'm noticing is that you are, if you look at this beginning box for student collaboration, teacher permits the learning focus interactions among learners. So I am seeing you, Doreen, you are inviting your students to talk about the learning. You read through a passage and you say, okay, students, turn to your partner, talk about this. But it's when that occurs, your students are engaged up to that point, it's when the students start collaborating that they start going off topic. They don't really know where to go with the conversation. So in this developmental pathway, the skills pathway, the next step up is teacher provides structures for learners to support each other in their learning. So what's the difference between this beginning level and this proficient level? Again, thinking about the evidence that I'm seeing. I walk into the classroom and what do I see actually going on? Yes, I see students talking about the learning. So that's that beginning level. What I'm not seeing is clear structures to support the students in their collaboration. Structures or strategies. This could be a think, pair, share, a KWL, a mind map that students can collaborate around. So I'm not seeing evidence of collaborative structures being implemented in the classroom. Well, awesome. This is where we can focus your development. This is where you can grow your skill. Instead of saying you're at an unsatisfactory or approaching proficiency level on your learning environment, we're saying you are beginning collaboration with the students, but it's not organized. Okay, so now our work becomes learning how to implement collaborative structures for students in the learning. This is very finite. It's something you can quickly do. And so remember how I described that when I work with educators, we talk about, it might take up to 2 years to master the full big standard. As you look at that indicator, it might take a semester, half a year to be able to really start showing improvement in this. But when we get down to the skill level, Doreen, if I'm working with you and you're going from encouraging students to talk about the learning to providing structures for collaboration, that may only be a week or two that you need to really be able to learn about this and implement it. And so we're starting to see efficiency in this process of getting better at one skill and practice in the classroom. And Doreen, as you wrote in, you would start working on setting up structures, activities for students to practice collaboration. Exactly. This isn't something which needs to wait till the next workshop to be worked on. This is something as a teacher you can start doing tomorrow. If you're aware of the skill you're working on, aware of your proficiency within it, because it's finite and applicable and evidence-based, you can start working on it right away. And then, of course, the skills pathway continues up to distinguished, which is teacher provides structures, time for learners to share and discuss each other's ideas and thoughts about the concept or curriculum. So this is where the conversation is really becoming focused. So yes, students are invited to collaborate, to talk about the learning, the beginning level. There are collaborative structures in place, which is the proficient level. Now really a distinguished performance. When I come in and I see you doing this, Doreen, I am seeing students in collaborative structures really focused on the learning. Great question stems being provided. They're using visual mapping to really focus the conversation. They're building on each other's ideas. Well, now you're applying the skill at a very distinguished level. This is the power of shifting to skills rather than beginning at the effective learning environment. This is what we're going to work on. We begin at the specific skill. In this case, the skill of student collaboration. The various skills add up to create this positive learning environment, learning climate, which obviously leads towards this highly engaging, classroom with a master teacher who creates an amazing, effective learning environment for all students. If we approach it from skills and we build up to mastery of pedagogical practice, we're now inviting the teacher to use evidence as their guide. The teacher is seeing the impact of their performance. The teacher is refining, practicing, getting better and better at what they do. Because we're beginning with what we can actually see. We're beginning with the evidence rather than beginning with the idea. As we have evidence of implementation, now the big ideas start to make sense. So this is really what we're advocating as we talk about a skills-based approach to professional development. And Doreen, thank you very much for being my example through this journey. And of course, what's so important with what you share right there, make sure you reflect with the students what went well, what needs more practice. Students are an incredible source of data as we measure our own implementation of these skills. So the last thing that I want to share with you is just that this skills-based approach really is part of a process. It's part of a cycle, and this is what we're defining as our growth and competency system. And this cycle, first step is assess. Second step is learn. Third step is practice, but it's cyclical. And so as I consider a skill, as I consider student collaboration, before I engage in the learning, I have to assess how I'm actually doing it. So, and this is just a quick formative assessment. It could be a self-assessment, even as you had suggested, I'm using input from students. And, how does it work? I'm videotaping myself, seeing myself perform. It doesn't. Now I'm starting to understand where my student collaboration is breaking down, or a coach or an instructional leader is coming in and informing me around this. So we begin with a quick formative assessment Where's my application of this skill? Once I know that, you know what, I'm inviting the students to talk with each other, but I'm not providing structures. Well, this really informs the learning. Now I'm engaging in learning in response to my formative assessment. So I don't begin with the learning, hey, I'm going to look at classroom management. I engage in the learning in response to my formative assessment. This is really where we're trying to go with student learning. Well, the same thing applies to adult learning. So I engage in learning if my formative assessment is showing me I really need to work on collaborative structures for students, then my learning is going to be focused on, well, what are good collaborative structures? What is a think, pair, share? Going to engage in it. Now I'm going to practice. I'm going to apply it. It's like chewing that piece of bubble gum and trying to blow a bubble. Doesn't work the first time. Well, when I practice it, I once again engage in a formative assessment. How did it go? What else do I need to learn? How can I refine this? How can I practice it again? And so when we're focused at the skill level, when we're using evidence to inform our improvement, we're able to naturally go through the cycle of assess, learn, practice, assess, learn, practice, assess, learn, practice. As we go through this is a very fast process. This almost happens every day or every week. It's a continual cycle. As we get better and better at the skill, well, that's really where we start to show mastery of this particular skill. This is where some of the tools such as micro-credentials come into play. I've really mastered this skill. I want to submit evidence of my mastery of it. I want to receive credit in the form of a micro-credential for me mastering this skill. So the other component as well that can come into play in this are teacher evaluations. And this really depends on whether or not the teaching staff trusts the evaluation process. If they trust the evaluation process, it's a great data set to provide a starting point for this cycle. And so as teachers engage in this cycle and they continually go through it, skill by skill by skill, they are improving their effectiveness in the classroom. Those skills add up to the general competencies. So another, the question we are often asked, so we're out here presenting this idea of growth and competency, and this is where our tool, Edivate, which is our on-demand professional development platform, really comes into play. And as we are developing Edivate and moving it along and making it more and more powerful and applicable for teachers, Edivate is really designed to help you accomplish this growth and competency cycle or process. So for the assessment, this is where Edivate Observe comes into play. And as Observe is developing, it's bringing on the capacity for you to really use a rubric to be able to analyze someone's performance in the classroom. This summer, we'll be moving to the point of being able to do self-assessments on Observe, so a teacher can really self-assess themselves. And when they determine their level of performance, that's really when we move into Learn, where the Edivate content comes into play. The practice component, well, this is where Edivate Review and the groups and the collaboration happens. So Edivate Review, when a teacher can videotape themselves, post it to Edivate, have their peers come in and comment on their practice. Hey, I understand what you're trying to do with the think, pair, share you're trying to implement there. One of the things I would suggest is you need to make sure students are actually taking the time to do the thinking part of this. They're too quickly moving into the sharing. So slow it down so the kids can really think on this. I mean, this is the type of feedback that can come, through this review or this collaborative process that Edivate provides. And then obviously, as we already talked, the micro-credentials. As an educator, as you build this collection of evidence that you are good at this particular skill or practice, you can submit it, get it assessed, be rewarded with a micro-credential that, yes, you are a master at a positive learning climate. So this is our growth and competency system. And it's been a lot of fun to the last while to be able to build this out and really consider how does this look like when implemented in a school system. And so I'm going to share one last story with you, but while I'm sharing the story, please submit your questions. And so any questions that you might have about how this process works, what the tools look like, etc. And so please submit those questions. After I'm finished with this last story, I will respond to your questions. So this photo that you see right here is a picture of Mogadishu, Somalia. And the interesting thing about Mogadishu, really Somalia in general, is Somalia has been basically an anarchic state. There's no formally recognized government in place in the country of Somalia. It's basically governed by warlords who divvied up the country and you know, their own turf, serving their own interests. And so this is a picture of the city of Mogadishu. And from my understanding, Mogadishu is almost 1 million population. So imagine a city of that size with no real functioning government in place. It's getting better in Somalia now, but it's been years and years trying to get to the point where they can show some progress. And so I was listening to an interview on public radio a few years ago. They were talking to a war zone reporter. And this particular reporter had spent time in these conflict zones all over the world. And the interviewer was asking him, you know, how do you stay in contact with family and friends at home? How do you post your stories? I mean, you're in some really tough areas. And this war zone reporter started talking about Mogadishu, Somalia. And he said, so here you have Somalia. It's an anarchic state. He said it's the best connectivity he'd ever experienced anywhere on earth. And the interviewer, you know, posed the question, what do you mean? The best connectivity? He said, yeah, when I'm in Mogadishu, Skype is perfect. It's great video conferencing. I can upload my stories, all the rest. And the interviewer says, well, how is that even possible in Mogadishu of all places? And this reporter says that basically there was no telecommunication system in place. There really wasn't a functioning telephone system. You know, it was all extremely limited. And a particular warlord at the time met with, you know, with a big international telecommunications firm, I believe it was Alcatel out of France, said, well, what's your best system? So they come in and within 6 months, they'd set up a brand new digital telecommunication system, top notch, top quality, the most recent technology. And so instantly Mogadishu goes from having no telecommunication system to one of the best in the world. Now that is an example of a quantum leap. A quantum leap is when we've experienced extremely slow progress, but then suddenly we leapfrog. We have amazing progress very quickly. That's a quantum leap. Mogadishu had this when they went from basically no telecommunication system to one of the best in the world in a very short period of time. And the reason why I share this is that when we shift to this skills-based approach to professional development, you know, when we're able to focus in on the skill, first and foremost, this is where we start seeing incredible progress and efficiency on the part of teachers, where teachers are able to start working on their skill, implement it, refine it, practice it, reassess it, learn more. Bit by bit, they're able to build their skill set very quickly. When we start with too general a concept, it's thick, it's heavy. We tend not to see the progress. And so really our invite to you today is to consider how is it that we more quickly, more efficiently help all teachers improve on their skills and truly become these master teachers. So thank you very much for your participation today. I really appreciate you joining us today. I would love to know what your questions are. Please submit them. I'm going to hold on for several minutes in case you have additional questions you want to ask. But also, if you're interested in seeing more how this can work in your school or your school system, please let us know. We will reach out to you and walk you through how this actually works. So thank you very much. Well, and actually, it's Dave, before you jump into it, Doreen actually posed a thought. I think teachers would be most interested in being able to have access to specific PD 24/7 short spurts and to be able to learn something while they are folding clothes, baby napping, etc. Spot on. We couldn't agree with you more. And if we organize the learning according to these skills, then those short spurts of learning that you're talking about, Doreen, are focused on what you actually need. You know, so you can be at home folding workflows, whatever it may be, learning quickly, through video, through other methods. How's that you improve student collaboration? How's that you improve another skill you're looking at? So thank you for sharing that. And any questions, I will hold on to wait for them. And thank you, Moral, as well.
Excellent. Thank you, Curtis. I'm going to launch a quick poll, just asking you if this webinar met your expectations. And you should be able to see that now on your screen. Please take a moment and just let us know. And we always are trying to improve our presentations and the content of these webinars. The next webinar in this series will be held in the first week of May. I'm working through the details, whether that would be the 5th or the 6th. But that information will be sent to you tomorrow with the recording and the presentation of this webinar. And again, thank you for everyone who's attended today, and thank you for your participation. Thank you, everyone, for taking that poll. I'll leave it open for just a few more minutes. Again, if you have any questions, please feel free to type them in, and Curtis will answer those.